YouTube, how we doing? It's your boy Matty B. Thank you guys for watching the channel. I really appreciate it. Pro Motocross 2023 is over now, and I got quite a few comments and suggestions to do a video about what are the best and worst tracks on the AMA circuit, and thought it was a great idea. I had it in my head that this would be a cool video to do for a while now, so now that the season's over, we got some time on our hands, and I'm done with all the rounds. This is actually the first time I've ever been to every national in a year, and some of those tracks it was my first time ever going to this year, so now I'm finally eligible to do a little bit of a ranking of sorts. Obviously, this is all my opinion. This is super subjective. You know, there's no one right answer. You know, this is the best track and this is the worst one. You know, everybody's different what they like, especially me being on a two-stroke. It's quite a bit different from everybody else that's going to these tracks, so it's all just my opinion. I tried to keep my bias out of it as good as I could, especially since my favorite track on this list is a track that I didn't even qualify for this year. Don't worry, y'all. I got plenty of footage of me riding at these tracks, so I'm not going to make you guys just stare at my ugly self this whole time. No choice. Yeah, there's some gnarly tracks on the national scene. None of them are easy. They're all just a totally different beast in their own ways, and they'll make a man out of you for sure. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and go through all the tracks on the AMA Pro Motocross circuit from best to worst. I think my favorite track might be a different one than most other people on the calendar. I know there's two tracks that most people say are their favorite, and neither of those are my favorite. My number one is actually UNADILLA up in New Berlin, New York. The place is just icon, I guess, can be. I've been watching racing up at UNADILLA since I was a little kid, and I can even remember back in the day when they used to start as a grass track, just up and down the hills in the grass, just staked out. I've always thought the place was cool, and I've never been until last year, and last year it was my favorite one as well. I don't really think the way they've been prepping the track the last couple of years, I don't think most of the guys have been the biggest fan of it, but just me personally being kind of a local and being better at those kind of smoother amateur rough kind of tracks, I've really loved UNADILLA the last 2 years. This year was a little bit deeper, a little bit gnarlier than last year. Last year was like a highway, but man, the track is just so fun. Like, it races good. It's a blast to ride. You go up and down the hills. You got the sky shot. You can throw whips off of every lap. You got the crowd just losing it every time you come by. You got Screw You, which is by far the steepest up and down hill I've ever hit on a dirt bike. I swear you can barely even get up the uphill of Screw You without damn near doing a backflip. So obviously it's rocky, but I really don't think it's as rocky as everybody's made it out to be. I haven't even used hand guards or anything special when I've been there. I think the dirt's pretty good, and you know, usually in years past they've had it plowed up just insanely deep and really wet, and even some rain in past years, and the place usually just gets insanely rutted and gnarly. And last year it was super flat, and I really liked it. This year it was a little bit more of the same, especially in practice. The track was just totally WFO in the morning, but it seems like they've kind of taken a little bit of a different route on their track prep the last couple of years. Not quite as rutted, maybe helps people move around on the track a little bit more. And all in all, especially in practice, whenever the track's nice and flat, I definitely think UNADILLA is the most fun. I felt like I could pretty much just hold it wide open on the YZ around the whole track this year to still not even make it, but it's an absolute blast of a track, and I sure hope I'm able to get to UNADILLA another time in the future, because that place is sick. Number two, I still feel like I'm a little bit different from everybody else, but my number two, I'm going to go with Thunder Valley in Colorado. This year was also my first time going there. The place is sick. I mean, a totally iconic location. The place is like right off the freeway in Lakewood and right on the mountainside. It's a sweet backdrop, and the track's really fun too. It's a lot of up and down hills, some fun jumps, and they seem to change it up quite a bit from year to year. They're not sure how it's been in years past, but this year, just with kind of the overcast weather, it wasn't very hot. The track stayed perfect all day. It got super mentally rutted. There was ruts everywhere I looked. I couldn't even really sit down through corners. I was just having to stand up through them because the place was so gnarly. But obviously up there at altitude, it makes the bikes a little bit slower too, so that kind of gave me a little bit more trouble than everybody else, being that we're on the 250 and the 450 class. So even with those factors, man, I loved Colorado this year. I was really looking forward to that one for a while, ever since I had planned to do it, and the track was it's a lot of fun to ride. It was good to race. There was multiple line choices and just different places to go. I feel like I took 100 different lines while I was out there that day, and It was a little bit deep and muddy in the morning, but it made for a good rest of the day, and definitely hoping I can get back to Colorado too. It's a little bit far. It's not these rounds on the East Coast swing, but if I do another season, and I probably won't be starting with the California rounds, but I would love to start with Colorado because it was a lot of fun, and I would really like to ride there again sometime. Next up, number 3, we got Redbud. You guys already know that's basically America's motocross track. Place is insane. You got the wild fans. The track is iconic. It's usually Redbud. I think Redbud is pretty much everybody's favorite, either Redbud or Millville, but just me personally, I kind of struggle with Redbud, so it makes it a little bit less enjoyable to me, but the place is badass. I mean, it's got this awesome Midwest loamy dirt, some loam sand mix, even with some mulch, and it's a really fun, flowy layout. Obviously, you got Laraco's Leap, which is a legendary jump that I haven't even been able to jump the last few years. I do wish that they would maybe make it just a little bit easier so we could get to hucking that thing every lap for the National. But, I mean, it's the best of the best. They make it tough for us, and the Leap's gnarly. Obviously, there's a lot of other fun jumps. They made a couple of new ones this year. There's a couple triple step-ups, some fun floater tabletops, and the off-cambers in the back are always gnarly. This year, the downhill into the off-cambers were some of like the roughest sections I've ever seen in my life. I swear it was all brakes, no gas. But Redbud is super gnarly. I thought it was one of the roughest ones of the year, and it's really, really fun to ride Redbud in practice. The first practice is always a little muddy, but second practice, once that mud kind of slings off and the track's not too rough yet, it's just an absolute blast to ride. Redbud, it's a track that you wish you could just go ride there on a day where it's flat and smooth, because the layout and the dirt and everything is just so epic. But man, that place gets brutal on Pro National days. It's kind of torn me a new one every time I've gone there, and maybe that's why it's not number 1 to me. I don't know, but I mean they definitely know what they're doing up there. There's all kinds of racing up at Redbud, and if you haven't been to Redbud, I would check it out because it's legendary. There's been Motocross of Nations there, and I mean, it is a fun track. You will definitely enjoy riding there, but it's not easy either, so just beware. My number 4 is High Point, and unfortunately, I'm not really basing that off this year's High Point, because this year's High Point was a bit of a disaster with the weather situation, and then they didn't know we were going to get the weather, so the track ended up being a total swamp this year, which I actually did kind of like that because I dig the mud, but High Point's another really fun one. It's a northeast one. It's one of the closer ones to me, so I'm a little bit more familiar with the dirt and the environment up there. It's got gnarly elevation changes. I think High Point's some of the steepest hills, like especially the downhill uphill before the finish line is just mental. It's straight up and down, and this year, you know, the bumps were this tall. You basically just had to roll through them. It felt like an endurocross section more than a dirt bike track, but track's a blast. It's got great flow. There's obviously a lot of line choices with the off-cambers and some option sections, stuff like that. Got some really fun jumps. Got that big quad on the hillside. It's a really fun floater, and you got a nice safe landing on the backside, so you're not totally puckered in the air or anything. So it's a fun jump. Get a little style. Take a nice deep breath in the air. And tons of sick up and down hills. You got the Bag Pro section. It's steep. It's rutted back there. And this year for High Point, it was like probably the ruttiest, gnarliest track I've ever ridden in my entire life. Just because obviously in the morning it started out really muddy, and you know, they're running on a time schedule at the Nationals, so they're not exactly able to just take half the morning and prep it up and fix it. So the track just got gnarlier and gnarlier all day long, and I even took Superfan for a little track walk after the second moto out there at High Point, and you know, I told him, you know, I don't think you'd even be able to get around this track. Like, come out here and look at this, and he definitely agreed with me whenever we get off. So High Point's gnarly. It's one of a kind, but even though this year wasn't the best, I really enjoy High Point, and I think if I do Nationals again, High Point's got to be in the contract because it's one of the closest ones, and I've had some good times there. Number 5, this one was actually way higher up on the list until this year, but number 5, I'm going with Millville. I think Millville was actually my favorite up until this year, but this is just my opinion again. You know, I couldn't even qualify for the race, so what do I really know? But I just feel like the track changes they made for 2023 this year at Millville, I feel like they really messed up the flow of the track and took out a lot of passing. They put a bunch of random singles in the track and took out a couple of the chicanes and made them even narrower and just super one-lined. And the one that really got me, this one I am kind of biased on because I'm on a 250 and I wasn't able to tame it, but they made these straight up and down triple step-ups going up Mount Martin, and Mount Martin's already gnarly enough. You know, I think Mount Martin's sick, you know, going all the way up the hill and then turn around and blasting all the way back down. I feel like it's kind of Euro style with the huge hills, and I mean, that hill is even bigger than Mount St. Helens at Glen Helen. I don't think Glen Helen holds a candle to Mount Martin, and I've ridden both, and Mount Martin is way gnarlier. But I'm not exactly sure why we needed to put a rhythm section up Mount Martin. I thought it was really cool how you kind of crested over the top and then you doubled up and then doubled again and just horsepowered up there. But they switched it up this year. I guess you never know until you try, but I didn't really love it. But Millville, it's another one of those Midwest tracks. It's got that awesome Midwest sand, and it's really not as sandy as everybody thinks. Obviously, you got the sand whoops, and those are really sandy. But besides the sand whoops, it's actually got a pretty hard base, and it's really not nearly as sandy as you would think. From the finish line to the end of the sand whoops, it's pretty sandy, but besides that, it's really not sandy at all. It's a lot harder than you would think, so either way, Millville is a fun track. It's got some really fun floater jumps that are really safe, and it had a good flow. I just feel like the changes kind of took away from the flow, but either way, it's an epic track. I mean, it goes all the way up and down the hills, all the way around the property. The place is sick to even just walk around. Like, on TV, it doesn't look like the hills are near as big as they are. Like, everything's pretty dang elevated, and when you're walking through the pits, it looks like you're looking up onto the top of a mountainside watching the track, so it's pretty cool. And again, I was a little bit bummed personally on the changes at Millville, but I'm sure there were people out there that liked them, and I mean, it's a sick track, so hopefully next year maybe they'll go back to the old configuration. It wasn't anything major, but just a few little things I thought kind of took away from Millville. At number 6, we got WASHOUGAL. I think I'm probably putting WASHOUGAL higher up on my list than most people would. I actually love WASHOUGAL. Last year in 2022, I think my favorite session of the year was the first practice WASHOUGAL. The track was perfect. It was like glue. Wasn't rough yet. It was just nice sticky ruts, and I had a blast at WASHOUGAL. Obviously, you got the road jump. You can throw some nice style off that step up. You got the gnarly whoops in front of the finish line. They're basically a supercross section on an outdoor national track. A lot of people complain about the dirt, about it being slick and stuff, and really, I've done a lot of racing at Muddy Creek, which is kind of similar to WASHOUGAL. It looks like it's really good, but it's kind of deceiving and slippery, so going in, I think I expected WASHOUGAL to be worse than it was. I mean, obviously it's a little bit slippery. It's no Redbud, but I kind of think it reminds me of Muddy Creek a little bit. I really don't think it's that bad. And what is bad at WASHOUGAL, though, man, the roost hurts so bad. That dirt's nice and hard, and going up Horsepower Hill is probably the worst roost you can get in motocross. I mean, it can damn near make a grown man cry, but not this one, no choice. But yeah, WASHOUGAL, it's a lot of fun to ride. It might not be the best racetrack. It can tend to get one-lined and all, but it's so much fun to ride. I mean, Horsepower Hill is sick, just holding it wide open up to the top and launching off to the bottom of it. Tons of sweet drop-offs and downhills. You got the big drop-off into the iconic S-turn, and you know, me being 27 years old and going to some of these tracks just now in my life, it's really cool for me to go through sections like Horsepower Hill and those S-turns and stuff, and just experience the iconic parts of moto. The place is sweet. And one big drawback about WASHOUGAL, the shadows are insane. I mean, it's like you're going from a room that's full of bright light into a room with the lights completely off, and you're trying to do that at speed too. So last year, whenever I actually qualified for the race, we got pretty lucky. It was pretty overcast most of the day, so we really didn't get the whole shadow effect until the second moto. And then this past year, it was pretty sunny, but I wasn't able to qualify for the motos, so I guess you could say I didn't really get the full experience. But the shadows are absolutely mental, and you hear everybody talk about them, and you'll never understand how gnarly they are until you experience it for yourself. It's something else. Don't even get me started about the atmosphere up in the Pacific Northwest. I absolutely love it up there. The place is so far away, but I still somehow find a way to get out there because I like it so much. So I hope that I can get out there again, but I'm not sure if it's going to be in the contract or not. It's a pretty big undertaking to do WASHOUGAL, and I dig WASHOUGAL. The only thing I got to tell them, man, get the starting gates fixed. We had 2 dang false starts in our 450 LCQ, and then we had a false start in the 450 Moto also. So I get the gates going, but once those gates fall, the track's sick. I love me some WASHOUGAL. Number 7, I'm going to go with Ironman, and I think most people have Ironman way higher up on their list, but the one thing that kind of gets me about Ironman is, you know, the jumps are huge, which is fun. It's pretty badass, but a lot of the big jumps don't really have that good of a landing, and man, I swear you herniate a disc on a good day riding out at Ironman. There's so many hard landings, and your body will feel it at the end of a day riding out there. I mean, you got that huge Godzilla hill, straight uphill, jump the tabletop, and the jump has almost no landing on it, and then that one in the middle is a pretty tough landing as well. I don't even remember what I counted as far as hard landings, but there's definitely quite a few of them, and I think it would have been cool this year had we been able to run that new wood section that they put in. I feel like it was kind of like some Troy, Ohio vibes, just riding through the trees, but I guess that section wasn't ready for us, so maybe we'll be running that next year. But they did a couple of things this year, like after the tabletop down, the Godzilla hill, they took out the S-turns, which made it really fast and sketchy, so I feel like maybe that could have been slowed down a little bit. And it was weird because I guess they were planning on running that new section and it wasn't ready. But yeah, the lap times were crazy short at Ironman. I think Jet ended up running like a 1:46, so it was a really short track, but it's got good dirt. They tend to mix it up with some sawdust and mulch and stuff, and it seems like there's some good passing. It's good racing up there, and it's a fun track to ride. It's just the landings really hurt. That's kind of the only thing I've got about it. But I went to Ironman the first year they ever had it in 2014 when it just got on the schedule, and I actually think the initial Ironman layouts were way sicker. They were a lot busier, just a little longer, and I think they were a little bit more rider friendly, but they've changed the track over the years to try to make it a little bit more fan friendly. They took out that big triple step up in the middle that everybody used to huck, and a couple other cool obstacles went to the wayside. So it's still a fun track, but I just don't think it's quite what it used to be. I think the OG Ironman was the best one, personally, but that's just me. We got Budds Creek at number 8. I actually liked Budds Creek a lot up until this year. I didn't really feel like this year's National was that great from Budds. Just, I guess they haven't had much rain up there, so the base was super, super hard, and then I'm not sure what was going on. It's like they watered the track enough for a hurricane to have came through. I mean, the track was full-blown mud fest in the morning. I even heard that they couldn't even get dozers up Henry Hill because they put so much water down. So I'm not really sure what happened there, but Budds was not quite top-notch this year compared to years past. It's still a fun track. You know, you obviously got the gnarly off-cameras, the up and down hills. They've made Big Gulp pretty big over the last couple of years and actually made it a pretty gnarly obstacle. Henry Hill was happy to not do a whiskey throttle to my death through there, but Budds Creek was definitely the muddiest track in the morning throughout all the rounds. They just had it flooded first thing, and I think that really hurt the racing. I think that made it pretty one line, just because if you got out of that one line, it was too muddy and deep to really do anything with it. So Budds has a lot of potential, but I just feel like they might have missed the mark a little bit this year, which is a bit of a bummer. But I mean, we go racing every year, so maybe next year they'll knock it out of the park and figure it out. But I just wasn't the biggest fan of it this year, personally. Then we got number 9, Paula. That was the first round this year. At the time, I kind of thought Paula was my least favorite, but I feel like everybody just kind of knows how Paula is. It's a SoCal track. It's a practice track that everybody's there all the time at, and you know, they kind of give it a little revamp once a year for the National, and I mean, it's just a National in SoCal. I mean, if it's not at Glen Helen, it's kind of only going to be but so good. There's really nothing too special about the track. They do their best. They kind of put in some man-made elevation with the step-ups, and in the back in the pro section, there's like a straight up and down hill that looks like it was man-made. So there was some gnarly stuff. The place it was a long lap time. I think I qualified with like a 2:34 at Paula, so that kind of made for some nice motos, made for not as many laps. Made it feel like it didn't last quite as long. But man, the couple of things that were so hairy at Paula, like right after the 2 raised up step-ups off the start, there was a double-double that just had like 15 sketchy swirly ruts up it, and then right after that, you did a little sweeper into these rollers, rhythm section loop type deal, and they were all just raked out, ruts all the way through there too. So I felt like I was puckered for like 20 seconds straight every time I went through there. So I feel like those 2 sections kind of made Paula out to be a little bit worse than it was, because the rest of the track really wasn't that bad. And those 2 sections just tore me a new one big time. And I had fun riding Paula, I'm not going to lie. Like I ended up going for a lot of the outside lines. They had a bunch of berms and stuff, so that was cool that you could kind of make different lines work out there. But I had fun in Paula. I mean, I was kind of flowing out there. And yeah, I don't think anybody out there is going to tell you that Paula's their favorite one on the schedule. But, I mean, for what they're working with, I thought it was pretty good. I just, I mean, it's a National in SoCal, and I'm from the East Coast, so I'm only going to think but so much of it. Rounding out the top 10, we've only got one behind this one. Rounding out the top 10, I'm going to go with Southwick. And I feel like my rating of Southwick doesn't really do it justice, because I don't really like the sand very much. Full disclosure, just I don't really ride in it very much, and I'm not very comfortable in it. But Southwick is my first time going there this year, and I heard it described as a hole in the wall, which is kind of funny. It's like perfect. It really is just like a little hole in the wall in New England. I'd never even been to New England before this year, but I thought it was cool up there. Basically just felt like you're driving through the woods all the time. But Southwick, it's a lot smaller than you would expect, especially for a National. You know, it's on the American Legion 338 grounds, so it's pretty compact in there. Not a ton of room for fans, so it seems like you kind of pack in like sardines there. But the track, I don't know why people say that Southwick isn't sandy. They must not have ridden there, because I rode there this year. Southwick is definitely sandy. It was deep. It was gnarly. I didn't make the motos, so I don't really have the qualifications to tell you how gnarly it was in the motos, but I watched enough action to know that it was a man's track. And Southwick takes no prisoners. It's a little bit on the narrow side, just it kind of goes through the trees, and it's not in a very big area, so it's a little bit narrow and small, but just how sandy it is and how rough it gets and all that, it kind of makes up for it. And Southwick's one of a kind. It's definitely, I think, the gnarliest one on the circuit this year. And watching those guys come off the track after second motos this year, I think would solidify that argument, because those boys were hurting big time. They even, in some sections, made some man-made bumps before the day even started. They already had some whooped out stuff out there just to make it extra gnarly. So Southwick's one of a kind. I don't know if I'll be going back there, but it's gnarly for sure. Finally, last one, number 11. Drum roll, please. Sorry, guys. Got to go with HANGTOWN. This was my first time at HANGTOWN this year. I was really excited for it just because coming from Paula, I expected HANGTOWN to be better. I was looking forward to it being a little softer with the rice holes and all that kind of stuff they usually bring in. And I guess they heard I was coming, and they didn't bring any of it in. They left it pretty hard pack-ish, and I really wasn't expecting it, and I really wasn't a fan. Like, I wanted to go back to Paula so badly in the middle of the day at HANGTOWN, and I never would have thought I'd be saying that. But, man, it was just sketchy. I mean, the start's wide open, straight into those hay bales through the chicane that you never let off through, and we even had a huge pile up in the 450 class in the second moto, so it's a perfect example of how sketchy the start can be. The dirt was just rock hard. It got dry. It got slick. You were pretty much literally riding on rock going up some of those hillsides and coming back down. I didn't feel like the track flowed very good at all. They made a couple of changes for HANGTOWN this year too, and they took out, there was one section, they put 3 doubles in, and it used to just be a step up at the end, which it was kind of an iconic section, and they took it out, so I was kind of bummed about that. But you got that middle downhill that's always gnarly. It really didn't seem like it was that bad this year. I don't think it got as rough or rutted as it does in years past. I feel like in years past it's been a little bit more East Coast than this year, and this year it was just full-blown West Coast HANGTOWN. So it was brutal. It got super hard-packed, and then they were just throwing water on it and just flooding it and making it an ice rink on top of all the rough and gnarly stuff. So it kind of felt like I was fighting a losing battle racing at HANGTOWN, but at the end of the day, I am stoked that I got to go to all these tracks, even the ones that I didn't love. I never thought that at this time of my life I would be doing 11 rounds of pro motocross and getting to go all over the country racing and riding a dirt bike. It's been cool. I honestly doubt that I'll do all 11 rounds ever again, just because now, you know, I can say I've done it, I've gotten it out of the way, and it was a pretty rough ordeal. But regardless, I'd love to get back to some of these tracks at some point in the future. They're all iconic and badass in their own ways, and yeah, pretty much every track on this list, if you could till it up and just go ride it by yourself on a private day, it would be the best time of your life. But whenever you go to a pro national and you put 40 of the best guys in the country and the world on the same track and just run it all day and hardly ever fix it, it's going to get gnarlier than you could ever imagine. And I said this to Superfan, but the average rider, I really think, would have a hard time even just making it around the track at a Nationals. So the Nationals are one of a kind, and I'm happy to have made it through them relatively safe. I'm still here to talk about it, and yeah, that's my rating of all the tracks. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I appreciate you guys watching. Catch you guys next time. No choice.